Part 38. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 371. Chapter 371 Treasure House. Little Snake, have you found anything else in this underground maze? They turned around many times but found nothing. Yes, Master, follow me. The little snake led the way again, this time to a room. Master, there are people down here, people who are frozen. I'm coming. Mujukin summoned the magical flying sword, poured spiritual power into the flying sword, and swung it towards the ice. Once, twice, 3 times. When Mujukin's fire spirit power melted the thick layer of ice in the room, the original appearance of the room was revealed. This is a living room. There is an old man sitting at the top, and 2 rows of people sitting on both sides of the bottom. They are all looking in the direction of the old man, and they must have been listening to the old man's words before they died. Mujukin stepped forward, used his spiritual power to melt the ice on the old man's body, and then took off the storage ring from his hand. He put his consciousness into the storage ring and searched for it, and found a jade plaque. One side of the jade tablet is the Shangguan, and the other side is the clan leader. Mujukin took out the jade plaque and gave it to Yuan. Yuan looked at it and gave it back to Mujukin. She was not familiar with this family sect in the world of immortality, and she didn't know it after looking at it. What do you know? Yuan asked. Well, I really know something about the Shangguan immortal cultivation family. When you were pregnant with your 2 babies, didn't I like to go out for a walk? I learned a lot about the immortal cultivation world. This Shangguan family was originally a 1,000-year-old Qing dynasty. The largest cultivating family in the Yao continent, they can be said to have controlled more than half of the cultivation resources in the entire Qinjiao continent. It can be said that they were very prosperous at that time, but one day this family disappeared overnight, and their city disappeared without a trace. No trace. I didn't expect it to be down here. It's just strange that their city is thousands of miles away from here. Why did they come here? Mujukin was puzzled. He took off the storage rings of the people sitting in the rows below and dug out 20 jade tablets. The 2 of them placed all the jade tablets. Sure enough, they were all from the Shangguan family. 10 of them were elders, and 10 of them should be the descendants of the old man. Huh? This is it. Mujukin picked up 2 of the jade tablets and looked at them carefully, then placed the jade tablets on the ground again, then found one from the pile of jade tablets and placed them in an orderly manner. Yuan and Xiaoshe remained silent on the side, watching Mujukin playing with things on the ground. Mujukin knows the formations, and it goes without saying that those jade tablets are very skillful. Sure enough, when Mujukin laid out a figure that looked like Chen Fa, Mujukin jumped up and hugged her. Waner, this is the teleportation array, and this is the eye. Mujukin held up the clan leader's jade. Said the card. Yuan also smiled with crooked eyebrows, kissed her and said, then let's see if there is anything else on those people. The Shangguan clan was so powerful at that time, and they disappeared overnight, so all their wealth must have been with them. Looking at them being in a meeting at the time, they probably didn't expect the disaster to suddenly come, and they didn't have time to send away their treasures. Okay, Mujukin searched for those 21 people again, not to mention finding some storage bags and storage rings. Waner, what should we do with these people? We collected their things, Mujukin asked. Let them stay here, this city belongs to them after all. Yuan thought for a while and said, it would be better to let them stay here than take them out for burial, and no one would come here. After such a long time, the deep pit above must have disappeared. Mujukin nodded, and then he put the last jade plaque on it. Sure enough, after the 21 jade tablets formed a complete formation, a halo of light appeared on the 21 jade tablets, and then slowly expanded. Let's go. When Mujukin saw the circle of light rotating, he picked up Yuan and jumped into the circle of light, followed closely by the little snake. When the two people and the snake disappeared completely in the circle of light, the 21 jade tokens also disappeared. On the other side, two people and a snake appeared in a stone room. When they completely appeared in the stone room, the 21 jade tablets appeared on the ground as if they had not been moved. This, Yuan was stunned by the scene in front of her. This is a very large stone room. It is full of spiritual energy and filled with jade shelves. There are many storage rings and many jade boxes on the jade shelves. There are many large jade boxes on the ground. There are many jade slips and magical instruments floating in the air. This is the treasure house. It's coming, it's coming. Don't touch Wan'er, little snake, there is a formation, it's a killing formation. Just when Yuan was about to move her feet, Mujukan quickly grabbed her. It's really not cheap. Yuan was poured cold water on her head. She curled her lips, feeling happy in vain. Mujukan rubbed her head, who said there is no bargain? You still have your husband. Really, oh, my husband is really in trouble, hurry up and break the formation. Yuan hugged Mujukan, kissed him hard, and smiled so brightly. Mujukan got some benefits, so he picked up the jade plaque on the ground, sat down and started playing with it again. After Yuan put the little snake into the space, she sat next to Mujukan, her hands wrapped around Mujukan's waist, her little face rested on his shoulder, and she watched him play with it. These jade tokens will definitely be useful if you follow me here, Mujukan couldn't help but said after a long time when he didn't create a clear hall. Well, I believe you, take your time, we are not in a hurry, Yuan said, still putting her arm on his shoulder. Mujukan turned his head and pecked her on the face, and said with a smile, looks like I'm going to disappoint you. How can you do it? Hurry up. Yuan pinched his waist hard. Hiss, it hurts. Mujukan grimaced in pain, unable to withstand his wife's lust, and continued to play with the jade token. Mujukan saw that there was nothing he could do with this, so he suddenly had an idea and turned over all the 21 jade tablets. Sure enough, some lines appeared on this side, and he placed them one by one. After he put down the last jade tablet, a formation suddenly lit up, and then he heard a buzz sound, and the formation went off. At this time, he released his spiritual consciousness again, and the original array pattern surrounding them had disappeared. Wan'er, go and move quickly. Really? Yuan jumped up. Really, more real than real gold. The formation is broken. This is a formation within a formation. When the previous formation was activated, the other formation disappeared, Mujukan explained. He stood up and put away the formation. Then he led Yuan to the jade stands with 21 jade tokens. Yuan casually took a storage ring and took a look with her spiritual consciousness. Ah, Mujukan, here are some ores. She quickly gave the ring to Mujukan. Mujukan took it and saw that it was true. The corners of his handsome mouth raised, and he returned the ring to Yuan. Wan'er, put it away. They are all rare high-grade ores, which are perfect for refining magic weapons and spiritual treasures. Yuan took over the income space, and then moved it towards the jade shelf. Collect the jade boxes on the ground. Collect the jade slips, magic weapons, and spiritual treasures floating in the air. It took the two of them 2 hours to collect it. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 372. Chapter 372 comes out. After the two of them finished collecting, they thought about how to get out. Mujukan had no choice but to take out 21 jade tablets and study them again. This time it didn't take much time. Mujukan set up a teleportation array. Wan'er, come here. When the formation was activated, Mujukan carried Yuan into the formation. Two people suddenly appeared in the ruins. After the two stood still, 21 jade tablets appeared under their feet. Mujukan quickly collected the jade token and looked around. It was a huge ruin. Yuan, someone is coming. Before the two of them could see clearly what kind of place this place was, there were 2 or 3 people in the distance rummaging through the ruins. A golden elixir male monk said, "Do you think we can pick up some leeks?" Another golden man in black clothes said, "People come to pick it up every day. Do you think anyone has picked it up? They all come here to try their luck. Thousands of years have passed, not just 1 year. Some people have picked it up before." "Well, you're right, we can't complete the mission this time," another female cultivator continued. "Hey, brother, look at Huang Guzi and the others are here too." A middle-aged golden elixir monk in blue said, "You don't care what they do, there are not even 1,000 but 500 people who come here every day, so don't cause trouble." The two of them listened for a while, then Mujukan hugged Yuan and swept away, 10 feet away. "Mujukan, isn't this the ruins of Shangguan City?" "Definitely, let's leave here," Mujukan nodded firmly. They came out of someone else's treasure house. If not Shangguan City, they would be there. These monks are really persistent and have not given up even after 10,000 years. It's just that they never expected that this huge fortune would fall into their hands. Okay, the two of them flew towards the outside of the ruins. After Mujukan advances to the nascent soul stage, he can fly freely in the air without having to borrow a flying sword. From the air, you can see how big Shangguan City was back then, even bigger than Juyo City. Mujukan didn't stop. They knew they couldn't find anything in the ruins. Back then, the city and the people in the city disappeared together. Those people were frozen in the Kyangshan icefield, and they got the treasure again. He held Yuan and flew until he arrived outside a city before stopping. The two of them entered the city and found an inn to stay. In the room, after Mujukan activated the formation, the two entered the space. In the space, when the two babies saw their parents coming back, they both came up to ask for a hug. Yuan picked up Xiaobao and kissed him on the face, "Do you miss your parents?" Xiaobao nodded his little head and said with a squeaky voice, "I want to." "Hey, Mujukan, let's take them out to play tomorrow, okay?" Mujukan had not yet said anything, but Xiaoqing was very eager. She said, "Master, can I go out?" Yuan looked at Mujukan. Mujukan looked at Xiaoqing. She had a thicker aura than him. She was not afraid that someone would get her idea when she went out, so he nodded. After the two of them fed the two babies, they asked Xiaoqing to take them out to play. They had to clean up the things that were still placed in the medicine field. The two came to the medicine field. Looking at the 10 large jade shelves, Yuan had a headache. Where should I put these things? The space is still too small. The elixirs harvested in Juya forest have not yet been planted, and now this big jade frame may take up 5 acres of land. This jade shelf is made of fine ancient jade. It is not easy to lose spiritual energy when placing treasures, and it can better protect the treasures. So it is impossible to lose it. There are also dozens of large jade boxes. Mujukan, why don't we build a treasure house? There's no place to put so many things. There is no need to build it. There are so many ores. I'm going to refine a treasure pavilion. Mujukan looked at the sky in the space. It was very high. The treasure pavilion could have a few more floors. Yuan narrowed her eyes. Okay, by the way, you can refine another attic and demolish those wooden buildings. It occupies 10 acres and can free up a lot of land. Well, you clean it here and I'll refine it. Mujukan rubbed her head, took several kinds of ore from the jade rack and left. Yuan then walked to the big jade box and opened one. There were some elixirs inside. She took out a elixir and looked at it. The spiritual energy on the elixir had lost some, and the efficacy of the elixir was greatly reduced. Yuan sighed, what a pity, they were all high-end rare elixirs. However, she did not put the lid back on, allowing these elixirs to absorb some of the spiritual energy in the space. The aura in the space has been very strong for so long. If these elixirs are exposed to this aura, sooner or later these elixirs will recover. Yuan opened 10 large jade boxes one after another, which were full of elixirs. She sighed at the Shangguan family's financial resources. These 10 boxes of elixir alone were worth a lot of money. Even all the elixirs of the divine transformation pill can be found here. Yuan was still worried before, but now there is no need to worry. Yuan opened all the other large jade boxes. One jade box actually contains spiritual wine. Of course, spiritual wine was contained in 5 jade bottles. There are several boxes full of neat spiritual stones. There are 2 boxes containing a box of men's cassocks and a box of women's cassocks. Yuan picked out a women's cassock and took a look at it. It was a smoke-colored fairy skirt with spiritual patterns on it. It looked like a high-end cassock, so she put it on the spot. After using her consciousness to see how it looked on herself, she smiled with satisfaction. It looked good indeed. The faint wisps of smoke and clouds on the clothes are like being in the clouds and mist, looking like they are floating in the air. Yuan was stunned for a while and continued to clean up. Half a year had passed in the space. On this day, Mujukan left the weapon refining room with 2 palm-sized lofts in his hands and went straight to the wooden house. Waner. In the wooden house, a stunning fairy, who seemed to be surrounded by clouds and mist, was sitting cross-legged on the bed. Mujukan was stunned. He had never seen Waner with such a fairy spirit. Beautiful. What a nice view. Mujukan's breathing was a little short. Yuan slowly opened her eyes and smiled sweetly at Mujukan. Seeing the 2 things in his hands, she immediately got out of bed and walked to Mujukan. Has it been refined? Seeing Waner like this, Mujukan's Adam's apple rolled, and his burning eyes seemed to melt her. He nodded, placed the 2 small lofts on the table, closed the door, lifted Yuan up with his long arms and put them on the bed. A few days later, Mujukan fell asleep with Yuan in his arms. Yuan moved her limp body and poked Mujukan's forehead with her finger. The 2 of them slept for a whole day before they woke up. Mujukan felt refreshed and refreshed. He looked at Yuan with a smile and couldn't get enough of it. After kissing her on the face, he held her hand and took the 2 pieces of wine he had refined. A small attic comes to the wooden building. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 373. Chapter 373 Being Targeted. Waner, are these wooden houses destroyed or should they be kept? Yuan shook her head. There is no need to keep it is all built with ordinary wood from the past. However, these wood should be removed and kept to be used as firewood in the future. Okay, after this is done, let's grill some of the ice arrow python meat. Okay, then when you tear down the wooden building, keep the useful things inside. Mujukan, okay. The 2 began to demolish the wooden buildings. After a burst of crackling, the 5 wooden buildings on the ground disappeared. After the 2 of them trimmed the ground, Mujukan released the attic. After a few magic spells were fired, the palm-sized attic grew higher and higher at the speed of the naked eye. A few dozen breaths later, a 10-story silver-white attic stood on the ground. Mujukan placed the treasure pavilion in the open space next to it and did the same thing. A 5-story treasure house appeared in front of them. The treasure pavilion is hexagonal and larger than the attic. Mujukan held Yuan's hand and said, "Let's go in and have a look." Good. They are advanced attics, each floor is of moderate height, and there are 3 rooms on each floor. 1 bedroom, 1 living room, and 1 training room, each of which is relatively large, more than enough for 1 person to live in. Yuan saw that these rooms were lined up in a row and looked relatively single. She thought of a modern suite with a door open and everything inside, including a balcony. Hmm, I'll tell Mujukin another day. Just keep this. If you really don't like it anymore, you can exchange it for a spiritual stone. How was it? Mujukin asked her after the two came out. It's okay. I'll draw you a picture of the sweet when I have time. You can see if you can refine it. Sweet, from your world. Yuan nodded. Well, it has everything in it, it's more practical than this. Mujukin said anxiously, what kind of house? Why don't Wanner draw it for me now? Yuan nodded. She took out a blank jade slip and handed it to Mujukin after a few spiritual inputs. Mujukin took it and took a look, his face immediately lit up with joy. He hurriedly said, Wanner, I'm going to study and understand. When I come out, we can sort it out together. Yuan smiled at him. It was rare to see him so anxious about anything. She said, no, you can go ahead. It won't be difficult here. She just needs to use her spiritual consciousness. She is also looking forward to Mujukin refining the finished product of the suite. Okay, Mujukin took the jade slip and entered the attic where it had been placed. Yuan's consciousness suddenly moved, and everything in the medicine field entered the treasure room. The first floor of the treasure pavilion is a hall, and the second to fifth floors are where things are placed. After putting them away, Yuan planted the elixirs that she had put in the storage bag in the open space. After that, I picked some spiritual fruits and made juice for the two treasures. I also roasted a lot of meat and stewed a large pot of low-level monster meat. The two treasures were still young and could not eat the meat of high-level monsters. Then Yuan asked Xiaoqing to bring the two treasures back, let them have their stomachs full, and prepare to take them out for a walk. It is not good for children to stay in the space for a long time. People live in groups, and being away from group life for a long time will make their minds disconnected. Yuan held Xiaobao, and Xiaoqing held Dabao. Before going out, Yuan warned Xiaoqing that this guy had been living in Juya Forest and had never interacted with anyone. Xiaoqing, follow me when you get out, don't get distracted. Xiaoqing nodded happily, Master, don't worry. Okay, let's go out. After saying this, Yuan's consciousness moved, and the four of them appeared in the room. Yuan stopped the formation, opened the door and walked out, followed by Xiaoqing. As soon as Xiaoqing came out, she was interested in everything. She looked around and touched new things when she saw them. When he walked onto the street, Xiaoqing couldn't see enough, and his consciousness was scanning everywhere. Her powerful spiritual consciousness swept away, making the hearts of many low-level monks jump. Xiaoqing, don't use your spiritual consciousness to scan around in the city, Yuan found out and hurriedly sent a message to Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing then retracted her consciousness and followed Yuan. The two treasures were looking around gurglingly when they came out. Their pink and jade-like appearance attracted many female cultivators to stop and watch. Of course no one dared to come forward to talk. However, there were two eyes in the crowd staring at the two treasures, as if they had discovered some top-notch treasure. However, when he found the two people holding the child, he took a deep breath and quickly ran away. Outside the city, in an unknown mountain, a figure rushed away. Soon he stopped in front of a cave, opened his formation and ducked in. In the cave, a sloppy old woman was refining elixirs. As soon as the man entered, he smelled a disgusting smell of blood. He quickly turned off his sense of smell and stepped forward, saying to the old woman, "Mother-in-law, I saw two dolls with spiritual powers in the city." A doll with psychic powers, the old woman looked like she was about to die. She turned around slowly, her cloudy eyes suddenly lit up, and asked in a rough voice. The doll with spiritual power is a spiritual fetus that is rare to find in 1,000 years. If this spiritual fetus is used to refine the elixir, it is guaranteed that she can return to her original unparalleled beauty. Yes, yes, how dare I lie to you? It's just that the adults holding the child have very high cultivation levels. One is a female cultivator at the golden core stage, and the other female cultivator can't see clearly, so there is nothing I can do this time. The person who spoke was a horse-faced monk in the late Jindan stage. At this time, he looked at the old woman's old face that was like tree bark with trepidation. He was really afraid of this old witch, and he cultivated his immortality well. His immortality path ended when he was caught by this old witch and did unscrupulous things to her. But one of the two people he saw today should have a very high level of cultivation. He believed that if he let the old witch go by herself, she would definitely go against that person. If the old witch is killed, he can get rid of the old witch and continue to cultivate immortality in the future. If the old witch succeeded in catching the child, at least it was not with his own hands. Well, let me go away. If it is as you said, I will not treat you badly. If you lied to me, you know what I have done to you, the old woman said tremblingly, as if he is about to die. The horse-faced monk immediately knelt down and said with fear, Mother-in-law, I don't dare to lie to you. The old woman glanced at him, then suddenly stretched out her hand like a dead tree to grab the horse-faced monk, and disappeared in a flash. In the city, wherever Yuan and the two walked with the two treasures in their arms, the monks everywhere looked at them. There is a pair of such cute and beautiful dolls in the world, and all the monks who see them cannot help but admire them. Liangbao also made enough eyeballs today. Mother-in-law, those are the two babies. At this moment, the old woman and the horse-faced monk had arrived and were mixed in with the crowd. The old woman saw it, her old face smiled like a withered chrysanthemum. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 374. Chapter 374, Killing the Old Woman. Yuan frowned. Her heart skipped a beat just now, as if she was locked by something. She immediately used her consciousness to scan, but found nothing. But the feeling made her very uncomfortable. She immediately said to Xiaoqing, who was still watching with enthusiasm, Xiaoqing, let's go back. Ah, master, I haven't seen enough when I go back so quickly, Xiaoqing muttered, still looking around with his eyes, like a wild horse that had lost its stiffness. Well, go back. Yuan believed in her intuition. Xiaoqing nodded and returned to the inn with Yuan. Seeing them leaving in a hurry, the old woman waved to the horse-faced monk, and the two of them followed Yuan and the others step by step. Yuan's consciousness kept paying attention to her surroundings. Two people with strange auras suddenly appeared in her consciousness. When she saw the old woman clearly, her heart skipped a beat. Most monks will not look old anymore. This old woman is not only old, she also has a deathly and disgusting aura about her body. It seemed that they were walking with the pedestrians, and Yuan was sure that their target was them. Yuan really didn't understand why the old woman was targeting them. They hurriedly entered the inn and put the two treasures into the space. Only then did Yuan feel at ease. Master, why are you coming back in such a hurry? Xiaoqing didn't understand. When she saw that the master breathed a sigh of relief after accepting the two young masters, she asked doubtfully. Yuan looked at Xiaoqing. He was very simple-minded and she might not understand. She said, it's nothing, you should go back and take the first and second treasures. Xiaoqing nodded in confusion. She had sensed the master's previous eagerness. If the master said it was okay, then it would be fine. He asked her to go back. After Yuan took Xiaoqing into the space, she sat in the inn, thinking about it. After burning half a stick of incense, Yuan walked out of the inn again and rushed out of the city. She wanted to know why the old woman was staring at her. She and Mujukan had no enemies in Qinzhou continent, and they kept a low profile. The only thing was that they had just come out of Shangguan ruined city. No matter what the reason is for being targeted by the old woman, she must figure it out and eradicate it when necessary. As soon as she left the city gate, the old woman and the horse-faced monk followed her out. Yuan glanced outside the city and flew towards a mountain forest. She did not fly with a sword, but used footwork to shuttle through the forest, always keeping a distance from the two of them. Phew, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Yuan stopped to steady herself and stared at the old woman in front of her. The old woman was alone. She stood 3 feet in front of Yuan like a dead tree, her two cloudy eyes staring at her in annoyance. I wonder what the old lady means by blocking my way. What do you mean? Humph. Hand over those 2 babies, and I will spare your life, otherwise. The old woman's extremely unpleasant voice sounded. Yuan was stunned after hearing this. Hand over the 2 treasures. Why? She thought they were here for robbery, but it was different from what she thought. But no matter what the old woman's purpose was, she would not let the old woman go today, and even asked her to hand over her son. In an instant, Yuan raised a talisman, and the talisman rushed towards the old woman like a flying sword. The old woman did not expect that Yuan would suddenly take action. She also wanted to force Yuan to hand over the child. The old woman raised her hand, and a dragon-headed crutch appeared in her hand. The dragon-head crutch was turned in the old woman's hand, and a halo of light filled with spiritual energy enveloped the old woman, and the talisman issued by Yuan exploded when it hit the halo. A rumble sounded for a moment, and the forest suddenly burst into flames, burning the surrounding trees. However, the aperture around the old woman was not affected at all, and she looked at everything with disdain. It's like watching monkeys playing. Suddenly, the old woman raised her crutch and waved it at Yuan, and a powerful force hit her. Yuan raised her steps and found that she was already a foot away, dodging the old woman's attack. The old woman was a little surprised to see Yuan dodge her attack. A late-stage golden elixir could easily dodge her attack. A little bit powerful and a little interesting. The old woman's cloudy eyes immediately flashed with light, and her eyes were instantly clear. She swayed and chased after Yuan again while waving her crutch. This is so fast. Seeing that Yuan could not dodge the blow, Yuan's consciousness moved into the space. Huh. The old woman stood at the place where Yuan disappeared, and her spiritual consciousness searched the surroundings carefully. Why did the person suddenly disappear? Invisible? Or did you use the teleportation charm to escape? The old woman scanned carefully and found that there was indeed some spatial fluctuation in the air. Suddenly, the old woman flew into the air, searching for the ground with her consciousness. The teleportation symbol is a short-distance teleportation, the longest distance is no more than 1,000 miles. Qinli is still in her consciousness. Although her strength has declined much as before, her consciousness is still in the stage of becoming a god. After searching to no avail, the old woman searched everywhere in the mountain forest. She didn't believe that Yuan escaped so quickly. Yuan in the space saw that the old woman was no longer where she disappeared, and she ducked out with the little snake. She couldn't deal with the old woman without using the soul thorn by herself, and the old woman was too fast, so she couldn't hurt the old woman by herself with the soul thorn. Let the little snake come out to help this time, and kill the old woman no matter what. When the old woman was about to leave, Yuan appeared again in her consciousness. She moved and teleported in front of Yuan. She cursed angrily, "You stinky girl, you dare to tease me, I will catch you and not pluck out your skin." Yuan rolled his eyes at her. What kind of lunacy is this? He came to her out of nowhere to hand over the 2 treasures. He couldn't catch her and even said he was teasing her. What kind of logic is this? However, Yuan was not in a hurry to take action this time. She shrugged and said, "You old witch is so rude. You asked me to hand over my son for no reason. You didn't have the ability to catch me. You also said that I was teasing you. You are such an old witch. Could it be that the witch has Alzheimer's disease? Tell me, where are those 2 dolls?" The old woman shrugged her shoulders in anger. This female cultivator dared to scold her. She suppressed the fire in her heart and roared out in a hoarse voice. Yuan rubbed her ears that were stung by the extremely unpleasant voice and said, "Where is my son? Why do I have to tell you, an old witch? Don't tell me. I'll kill you and then look for you." The old woman angrily raised her crutch and attacked. Ah! The old woman suddenly screamed and dropped the crutch in her hand. She immediately covered her right hand in pain. Toxic, the old woman spit out 2 words. Yuan quickly dodged the blow that the old woman had already used. When he heard her scream, he knew that the little snake had succeeded. Yuan moved his steps, landed behind the old woman a few times, and immediately sent out 20 soul thorns. At such a close range, all 20 soul thorns were absorbed into the old woman's sea of consciousness. With Yuan's explosion, the old woman's head exploded to pieces in an instant. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 375. Chapter 375 Home. Master, after the explosion, the little snake flew over and wrapped itself around her wrist. Looking at the dead old woman lying on the ground, it spat out a black storage bag in Yu's hand. Yuan put the storage bag into the space and threw a fireball on the old woman. After a while, there was only a trace of black ash on the ground. Yuan threw a water ball, and there was nothing on the ground. Yuan sighed, the old woman was solved, and there was also a horse-faced monk. So the master and the servant started looking for him in the mountains and forests. The horse-faced monk had already escaped. Just when the old woman left him behind and chased Yuan, he ran wildly into the city. After entering the city, he got on the teleportation array and fled. He had been waiting for this opportunity for too long. He didn't care whether the old woman would let him go if she was still alive. He just got on the teleportation array and escaped. It's not that he has never escaped before, but wherever he escapes, the old woman will chase him wherever he goes. I hope I can escape this time. He saw that the female cultivator next to Yuan was very powerful. No matter whether the old woman succeeds or not this time, it is not as smooth as before, and the little doll with spiritual power has a fatal temptation for the old woman, and she will not give up. So the old woman had no time to stare at him. How long will it take if you don't run away now? Yuan and his servant searched the entire mountain and forest but could not find the horse-faced monk, so they gave up. It was estimated that the horse-faced monk had escaped. Yuan returned to the city again, returned to the inn, and entered the space. In the space, Yuan played with her son for a long time before returning to the wooden house, taking out the old woman's black storage bag and pouring out all the contents. There are not many things inside, not many spiritual stones. Except for the walking stick, which is a spiritual treasure, there are several magic flying swords, several jade boxes, dozens of jade slips and some sundries. Several jade boxes contain elixirs of high quality. There are several exercises in the dozens of jade slips, and most of the others are for alchemy. There was only one elixir recorded on a black jade slip, Huanyan Dan. The main medicine of Huanyan Dan shocked Yuan. The body of a baby under 3 years old was used as the main medicine, and the spiritual fetus was the best. The so-called spiritual fetus is a baby who is born with spiritual power. Like Liang Bao, they can absorb spiritual power in their mother's body. If you start practicing in the future, your cultivation will be like riding a rocket, there will be no bottlenecks. I see. Yuan was still frightened into a cold sweat after reading it. If she couldn't protect her 2 treasures, the consequences would be unbearable. Fortunately, the old woman was eliminated. This kind of inhumane old witch should have been cut into pieces long ago. Using a baby to make elixirs is simply crazy. Yuan squeezed the harmful pill into ashes. After that, she put the useful things into the treasure pavilion and burned all the useless ones. After this incident, Yuan also stopped thinking about taking the 2 treasures out for a walk, and let them wait until they are older or return to Juyo City. In this way, Yuan did not go out, but practiced and raised the baby in the space. 5 years later, Mujukan came out of seclusion. Wan'er, look, is it like this? Mujukan came out holding a palace-like house in his hands and called Yuan anxiously. Yuan appeared in front of him with a flash of consciousness. Has it really been refined? Well, let's take a look first, Mujukan said, collecting the attic on the ground, throwing the re-refined attic underground, inputting spiritual power, and the attic gradually became larger. 100 breaths later, the spiritual power in Mujukan's body was exhausted, and the attic stopped. The color of the attic is still silver white, and its appearance is the same as the treasure house, which is also hexagonal. But the interior of each floor is not as simple as a suite. Each floor has a balcony and a garden. There are bedrooms, training rooms, alchemy rooms, and kitchens. There is no problem for a family of 4 or 5 on each floor. How is it? Mujukan asked. Yuan nodded, hugged him, kissed him, and said with a smile, my husband is a genius. This is true. You can refine it at such a high level in the nascent soul stage. This attic can not only be used as a place for people to live in, but can also be used as a defensive magic weapon. Mujukan also carved a defensive formation on the attic, which even the nascent soul stage monks might not be able to destroy. Wan'er had the best idea. We can live together in the future. Your wooden house is too small and only has 1 room. Mujukan kissed her back on the lips and said. Yuan thought for a while and then said, well, you can refine more, and each of your parents, brother and uncle can give 1 to each of them. When they are practicing outside, this is suitable for use in the wild at night. Refining once just layer it? That's a good idea. 2 people entered the attic. Mujukan led her up to the 2nd floor. How about we live on the 2nd floor? Can. She can live anywhere. So the 2 began to decorate the room. Liangbao had 1 room, and they had 1 room. Xiaoking's room was not here. After finishing the arrangement, Mujukan came up with 2 treasures in his arms and told them which room was theirs. The 2 babies also liked her very much, and the family stayed here that night. After the passion between the 2 of them passed, Mujukan hugged Yuan's limp body and said, Wan'er, I feel very at ease now. Why? Mujukan pecked her long eyelashes and said, this is the home I will give you, mother and son. Yuan felt hot in her heart. This man had been working hard, and his efforts were very strong, just to give the 3 of them, mother and son, a solid home. Yuan stroked his angular, plump, and handsome cheeks, and she said gently, fool, wherever you are, the home of our mother and son is right there. Don't impose burdens on yourself. We are monks, don't take everything seriously. They are still young and have high cultivation. Sooner or later they will ascend and leave this continent, and sooner or later they will separate. As for whether they can get together in the future, it is not clear now. Mujukan understood what she meant. He was already a nascent soul monk and might ascend to the spirit world, but he still wanted to live a normal family life with his wife and son. He could support the family. Mujukan sighed, hugged her tightly, and closed his eyes. The next day, the 2 of them came out of the inn, got on the teleportation array and returned to the outside of Juyo City. At this time, dark clouds were looming over the edge of Juyo Forest, and the dark clouds were gathering like a mass of black mist. Yuan stopped in mid-air, staring at the dark clouds. Wan'er, let's go over and see what's going on. Hope it's not what they feared. Yuandian, the formation of dark clouds is not the formation of Yuanying tribulation, it is the same as that of Xiaoking's tribulation. At the edge of Juyo Forest, it is unlikely to be a monk. Mujukan flew over with Yuan in his arms. Sure enough, at the edge of the forest, a huge silver demon wolf looked at the dark clouds in the sky and the roaring thunder in horror. There were monks watching in the distance. Some monks looked at the silver demon wolf thoughtfully, some were gloating about the misfortune, and some were worried. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 376. Chapter 376. This can be done. Some monks have greed in their eyes. If this fifth-level monster successfully overcomes the tribulation and makes a contract with it while it is weak, it will not go sideways in the world of immortality in the future. Only Mujukan and Yuan understand that it is not a good thing for the monsters in the Juya forest to come out. This shows that the restrictions in Juya forest are weak, and it is not far from the complete disappearance of the restrictions. The disaster in the world of immortality is coming. The two of them did not watch the silver demon wolf survive the tribulation, but returned to the house in Juya city worriedly. Wan'er, let's go see our parents first. Yuan nodded. They had been away for 4 months, and the two old men probably missed their 2 grandchildren. Sure enough, as soon as they entered the house, Mrsu asked about the 2 treasures. Yuan moved the 2 treasures out. Hey, Grandma's sweet grandson has grown a lot taller. Mrsu and Uncle Mu each picked up one, and they were very happy. At first, the 2 babies were a little resistant to their grandparents, and they were a little shy. After all, they are still young, and they haven't seen each other for 4 months, so it's normal for them to feel unfamiliar. But after a while, the 2 treasures seemed to find some sense of familiarity, and gradually became familiar with each other. Fengshi and Bai Zi also came over after they knew they were back. Finally, Yu Heiran and others came over. In the evening, 2 big tables were set up in Uncle Mu's yard, and everyone gathered to celebrate Mujukan. If it were a cultivating family, and a nascent soul cultivator came out, they would have a big banquet. At the table, Yu Heiran looked worried. He touched Mujukan beside him and said, "Do you all know what happened outside Juya forest today?" Mujukan nodded. Yu Heiran frowned and said, "I heard that the monster did not succeed in overcoming the disaster, but the ban may not last long. Finally settled here, don't be like Xianling continent, there is another wave of beasts. The monsters in the Juya forest escape, and the people on this continent will never be able to escape. They all serve as cannon fodder for them." Mujukan patted Yu Heiran on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, it's not that day yet. We'll go inside tomorrow." He also believes that after what happened today, the powerful monks in Kinjao continent will not sit still and wait for death, but will definitely organize monks to enter the Juya forest to hunt monsters. No matter how many monsters there are, there will be more monks. Yu Heiran said, "I will make arrangements tomorrow, and everyone who has nothing to do will go into Juya forest. Oh, by the way, you and Xiacer have put all the things they have in the market to sell. Now all the things have been sold out. Take this opportunity, earn more spiritual stones." Mujukan twitched and said, "You brothers and sisters are really the children of the same mother. You love money so much." Yu Heiran nodded proudly. "Here, Mrs. Feng and Mrsu are raising a baby each, so Yuan cannot be too relaxed. Xiao Ser, there is a girl who is interested in your elder brother. Let's go and have a look tomorrow. What do you think?" Mrs. Feng asked Yuan, who was still eating after feeding Erbeo. Yuan raised her head, nodded happily and said, "Okay, are you from Juya city, or are you a casual cultivator?" "Feng, she is from the city. Her family is in the west of the city and the conditions are not very good. She went to the shop to buy elixirs and became familiar with your elder brother. She is not bad looking, but her cultivation level is a bit low. She is still practicing Qi period." "Qi training period, how old are you?" Yuan asked with a frown. Seeing her frown, Mrs. Feng whispered, She must be in her 40s. Yuan raised her forehead and said, "Mom, my brother will definitely not like a girl like this. She is still in the period of chi training in her 40s. How useless she must be. Yu Heiran himself is a golden elixir monk, and he is very handsome. No matter what happens, the other party should have a foundation establishment monk. During the chi training period, you have to take care of the married woman first, and then you can consummate the marriage after the foundation is established. At such an old age, Yuan Yin has been lost before the foundation is established. Building the foundation in the future will be a lot of trouble. Although the Feng family can succeed in building a foundation so easily, it can only mean that they have good qualifications. That girl is in her 40s and has yet to build a foundation in such a rich place. This is not an ordinary waste material. Even if the foundation is built in the future, Yuan believes that this girl has no chance of forming a pill. Of course she has the spirit washing flower that can be taken by her, but it is not yet mature. When it is mature, the daylily will be cold. Ms. Feng opened her mouth and wanted to say something else. Thinking about it, the girl was indeed not worthy of her son, but she just wanted to help him out of wishful thinking. She felt uncomfortable when her sons were so old and they still didn't ask for a housewife. Then forget it, you can also help your elder brother pay attention to it. This is possible, Yuan nodded. Mom, you'd better not interfere in my brother's marriage, they are all focused on cultivation. Everyone is pursuing the great road, so it is best to ascend to the spiritual world and talk about these things. It's okay to say that their cultivation levels are not much different. With such a golden elixir and chi training, I don't know what kind of resentful couple they will become in the future. Ms. Feng sighed and nodded. She also knew that monks and mortals were different after all. After everyone had eaten and drank and returned to their respective homes, Mujukan and Yuan each carried a son back home. After the two put their son on the bed, they tidied up and lay down. Waner, Dad asked me to pick up Grandpa, eldest brother and second uncle, Mujukan said while holding Yuan in his arms. Yuan, okay, just go when you have time. It's not a short time to go back and forth if Waner doesn't come with me. Mujukan lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. You go and come back quickly, I have to use this time to earn more spiritual stones. Haha, your eldest brother and I are really brothers and sisters. During the meal, my eldest brother was still telling me about this. Of course they are brothers and sisters. Mujukan pinched her round nose and said, Waner, I'll go tomorrow, and let my parents take care of the first and second treasures. Yuan nodded, okay, then be careful and take a few more spiritual pets with you when you leave tomorrow. Mujukan nodded, and then leaned down. Mujukan, the child is still outside. Yuan slapped him away angrily. Mujukan, they sleep like little pigs, how can they wake up? Yuan rolled her eyes at him. If he didn't let him eat and run away tonight, he would pester her to death. She had no choice but to bring Mujukan into the space. The next day, Mujukan reluctantly said goodbye to his wife and son, and strode towards the city gate. Yuan took her son back with both hands. The mother and son returned to the space. She handed her son to Xiaoqing and went to make elixirs. After refining some enough to sell for a few days, she sent them to Yu Haoshan, and then took back the spiritual stones she had sold before. In this way, she refined elixirs day and night in the space. In 1 month, she refined thousands of bottles of 4th-level elixirs and thousands of bottles of 3rd-level elixirs. There is no need for her to refine it as she is in the 1st and 2nd levels. The low-level elixir cannot be sold at a high price. Then she drew a large number of 3rd-level talismans, but she could not draw 4th-level talismans. After Yuan sorted these things out, she came out of the space, handed them all to Yu Haoshan, and then prepared to enter the Juya forest alone. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 377. Chapter 377 Little Snake Prey. Mujukan said she would go together after he came back. There were still some days left, so she thought she might as well go in and take a look first. So she left the city alone at dawn. After leaving the city, she flew towards the Juya forest with her sword. On the way, there were indeed more monks going to Juya forest, but most of them were in teams, and there were few like her alone. Yuan flew to the outside of Juya forest and descended, holding the flying sword and walking inside. There are no monsters encountered outside, but there are several groups of monks encountered. Yuan chose a place with difficult terrain to walk on. She didn't want people to see that she had a 5th level spiritual pet and used soul thorns. When she went deeper, many of the green trees and flowers in the forest were destroyed, and there were signs of fighting everywhere. Yuan felt the aura in the forest. It seemed a little lighter than before, and there was a smell of blood in the air. Although it is just a little bit, it is not a good thing for Ruoda's Juya forest. It is estimated that this is also the reason why the restriction is weakening, and the restriction also requires spiritual power to support. While Yuan was thinking, a monster ran out. These monsters are not very powerful, but Yuan can kill them easily. In half a day, she gained a lot, and it became the spiritual energy in her space. In the evening, Yuan entered the space and played with her son for a while, then started practicing, refining elixirs and drawing talismans. Yuan feels that such a life is simple and fulfilling. When she is free, she thinks about Mujukan. Mujukan sighed, he hasn't left the Juya forest yet. He went out from the tunnel, but after he went out, he encountered a large number of monsters running towards the outside of Juya forest. Mujukan was shocked when he saw this scene. If so many monsters could get out, the mortal world here would suffer. He immediately chased after him. Fortunately, when the monsters ran to the edge, they couldn't get out, but they gathered together and charged forward. Mujukan immediately summoned his spiritual pet and went to kill him with his flying sword. The monsters were killed and the ground was full of monsters. There was a restriction in front of them, preventing them from getting out. Mujukan commanded his spiritual pets to surround them from behind, surrounding and killing the monsters. The spiritual pets were all of the 5th level. Yuan asked him to bring 5 of them. Including his own, there were 6. In a short time, there were countless casualties among those monsters. 3 days later, Mujukan packed up the corpse of the monster and left the Juya forest. The situation here is very bad. We need to pick up Grandpa and the others as soon as possible. Yuan walked to the top of a mountain that day. She looked around and saw that there were no monsters here. She was going to rest here for a while. Of course, she still let the little snake come out to watch for her. The battle just now exhausted her spiritual energy and she was seriously injured. I wanted to go back to space, but the sun happened to hit this place, and it warmed my body. Just heal your wounds here and recover your spiritual power. So Yuan swallowed the elixir and sat cross-legged to begin to recover. Roar. After a loud roar, a 4th level overlord leopard rushed towards Yuan who was meditating. Only when the leopard jumped halfway, it howled in pain, fell to the ground and died. At this time, a small green snake emerged from the mouth of the overlord leopard, spitting out its core and saying to itself, the 4th level demon elixir is not delicious, so why not get the 5th level one? The owner keeps depriving it of its food rations and wants to hunt it by itself. The owner is still recovering its spiritual power. The little snake lay lazily next to Yuan, basking in the sun. If you didn't look closely, you would have thought it was a dead snake. At this time, the sound of flying came from the little snake's consciousness, and it was still running towards here. The little snake dodged and hid in Yuan's clothes. The sound of galloping was approaching, and a short-eared demon rat stood with its head shrinking 3 feet away, staring at the body of the overlord leopard on the ground with a pair of sneaky eyes. The little snake's triangular eyes were swiveling around. It was still possible for it to use the corpses of monsters to attract monsters. There was no need to run around looking for them. These monsters arrived at their doorstep by themselves. Just as the short-eared demon rat glanced at Yuan and twisted its body to retreat, the little snake jumped out at an extremely fast speed and bit the short-eared demon rat's throat. After a while, a short-eared demon rat appeared next to the body of the overlord leopard. After a short stick of incense, there were a green python, a king kong, and a white fox on the ground. Gradually, there were more and more corpses of monster beasts on the ground, and more monster beasts were surrounding them. After Yuan recovered her spiritual power and injuries, she saw that there were corpses of monsters around her, with more than 40 of them. At this time, the little snake was fighting with a spotted python. Yuan collected all the corpses on the ground on the black soil at a low price, and packed all the 4th and 5th grade corpses in storage bags. She only meditated for 2 hours, and she killed so many little snakes. It took her several days to kill so many people. Looks like we have to let the little snake out, this guy is very cruel. With it taking action, these high-level monsters can still escape its grasp. Before, she kept thinking about it stealing the demon pill, but Yuan didn't let it out. She didn't know that if this guy ate a 5th-level demon pill, it would be equivalent to eating 50,000 spirit stones, which made her feel distressed. 50,000 spirit stones. It took Mujukan only 50,000 spirit stones to advance to nascent soul. These monsters that Yuan accepted have no demon pill left, what a prodigal son. The distress is distressed, that is also the little snake's own loot, and she has a good body. After thinking about it this way, Yuan felt much better. Master, here, the little snake threw the entire spotted python over. Okay, well done. Yuan quickly put away the body of the spotted python. Although this one was a 4th level one, the demon elixir was still there. The 4th level demon elixir is worth 20,000 spirit stones. Not bad. Better than nothing. Yuan was still very happy. Even after the little snake swallowed so much, she didn't feel so distressed anymore and took it to move the position. Every time he changes places after that, the little snake will use this trick to attract monsters. The monks did not attract them. Their master and servant were in the center of Juya forest, and few bold and powerful monks came in alone. Only those who have spiritual pets and space to hide in Yuan dare to come in. Yuan came in this time, and it was obvious that the monsters in Juya forest were a lot more frantic. They would kill monks when they saw them, and they would kill each other when they saw other beasts. It did make her a fisherman's prophet once. She simply released the remaining spiritual pets in the space to hunt the monsters. One more hunted at this time will result in one less disaster in the future. In this way, Yuan counted the time and Mujukan should be back almost after receiving the person. So Yuan went out in the direction of Juyo City. Bang bang bang. At this time, there was the sound of fighting 100 feet away from her. Yuan was already walking outside when she stopped and ran towards the place where the fight was taking place. In this center, not many people can come in, but even fewer can go out. This person can come in, and the weakest one is a nascent soul stage monk. No matter what, Yuan has to go take a look and help if she can. It is a pity that a high-level monk died here. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 378. Chapter 378 Shocked. In the dense forest, two figures were indistinguishable. A male monk in black robes was so fast that Yuan could not see his appearance clearly. His opponent is a 5th-level blackbird. The blackbird's huge body is extremely flexible, and every attack catches the monk Xuanyi by surprise. Yuan looked at the Xuanyi monk again. Although he was attacked by blackbirds every time and was unable to fight back, a closer look showed that he was not injured. Instead, his Xuanyi was as clean as new clothes. It turns out that the Soigny monk is not unable to defeat him, but he wants to train this colorful black bird. The black bird has a trace of phoenix blood, and is a rare breed among birds and monsters. This monk has good vision and good luck, which made Yuan feel a little envious. Every person and bird in the fight seemed to be aware of Yuan, and they all looked at her in unison. That sudden glance made Yuan astonished. Yuan was a little dumbfounded. Except for Mujukan, who was extremely beautiful, no other man he had ever seen could surpass him in appearance. This monk in Soigny is not only not inferior to Mujukan in appearance, he even has a slight advantage. The little snake moved on her wrist, and the owner was stunned when he saw the beauty. Yuan came to his senses in an instant and ran out of the forest using his footwork. The beauty is poisonous, it's better to leave as soon as possible. Master, isn't that beauty beautiful? Beautiful. Compared with those who admire beauty, which one is more beautiful? Nonsense. Well, master, this is the beginning of Chengzhen. Pa, Yuan slapped the little snake, you can still speak idioms, but it's all nonsense. Move your head. Don't mention this to Mujukan today. She couldn't resist it when she thought of that jealous person getting jealous. The little snake was so happy to quarrel with its owner and was slapped for no reason. It stopped thinking and continued to quarrel, paying full attention to what was going on around it. Master, there is a team of monks fighting monsters, do we want to help? Not to go. The war between humans and animals is going on all the time in Juya Forest, and she can't help. She certainly saw the fight between that team and the monks would not suffer. Why should she interfere? Yuan Mao ran out with all her strength. Master, master, stop quickly, it's the young master and the others, the little snake shouted. Yuan was running with all her heart and soul, but this time her consciousness was not that far away. When she heard the little snake calling, she stopped immediately. The spiritual consciousness was released, and it turned out to be the elder brother and the others. Yu Heiran and his party of 8 fought with a group of red-haired demon monkeys. Although there were many demon monkeys, they all had spiritual pets and their own strength was also good, so they were able to handle them with ease. Yuan looked at it for a while and then left. Master, don't you go and take a look, the little snake saw her leaving. No, Mujukan should be back. We'll come back in a few days. Yuan shook her head and said. He didn't see her when he came back. He didn't know what he was going to do. Out of Juya Forest, Yuanyu took off her sword and flew towards Juya City, and then returned to the house. In the house, as expected, Mr. Mu's family, and Mu Yunchen's family were all here. At this time, they were chatting with the Feng family, Mr. Mu and his wife. When they saw her coming back, they all said hello to her, and she also greeted them one by one. Wan'er, ask Dabao Urbao to come out and let your grandpa take a look. Your grandpa is urging you all the way, second Master Mu said. Yuan nodded. Then remove the 2 treasures. Ha ha ha, these are my 2 little great-grandchildren, come and give me a hug. When Mr. Mu saw the 2 identical dolls, he was so happy that he immediately came to give them a hug. Dabao and Urbao looked at the rough old man timidly, and they all looked at Yuan. Uncle Mu and Mrsu scared the 2 children when they saw the curtain. How dare they say that Master Mu is half? They all looked at the 2 treasures intently to see what they would do. Yuan knelt down, touched the 2 treasures' heads and said, Dabao, second treasure, be good, that's your great-grandfather, your father's grandfather, go ahead and let your great-grandfather hug you. Mr. Mu probably knew that he had frightened the 2 children. He also squatted down, spread his hands, and said in a gentler voice, Dabao and Urbao are good, come and give me a hug. The 2 children are growing up so well that I really want to hold them in my arms right away. Go. At this moment, Mujukan came out and saw this scene. Daddy, when Liang Bao saw him, he threw up his short legs and ran towards him. Mr. Mu. Ha ha, good son, "Do you miss daddy?" Mujukin took the two babies and kissed them on the face. "Think," the two babies replied with a sweet voice. Mujukin kissed his son's face lovingly, then picked up one in each hand, walked to Mr. Mew, and handed the big treasure to him. Mr. Mew carefully took Dabeo and patted Dabeo's back. Dabeo was stiff at first and kept looking at his parents. As Mr. Mew patted his back gently, Dabeo gradually relaxed and looked at Mr. Mew. Dabeo's first impression was that his great-grandfather looked very strange. His beard was all white. As he looked at it, his little hands unconsciously pulled it up. Mr. Mew laughed loudly, and the little great-grandson was no longer afraid of him. It provoked Xiaobao to go up and grab him. "How long have you been here?" Yuan asked Mujukin. "You went to Fangxi in an hour." "No, I just came back from Juya Forest." Mujukin held her hand harder and said, "You are very brave. I asked you to wait for me to come back and see how I can deal with you later." Yuan touched her nose. "Have their house been found?" Mujukin shook his head. "It's hard to find a house. There's nothing for sale during this period. People are renting it out. Let's live in the remaining house for now." Nowadays, there are many monks from all over the world of immortality who enter Juya Forest to hunt monsters. This place is close to Juya Forest, so most of them will settle here. Everyone sat for a while, teased the two treasures, and then went back. "Wan'er, let's take the Dabeo and the second treasure here to stay for a few days before leaving." Mrsu found Yuan. "Yes," Yuan smiled and nodded in agreement. Mr. Mew went back to live with the two of them, and it was normal for him to want to take the two of them there to stay for a few days. Mu Iryi's family and Mu Yunchen's family were brought there by Mujukin. When he came back, he met Yuan. "Have the arrangements been made?" "Okay, then it's time to settle the score." Mujukin grabbed Yuan and put it on his lap. "What's the account?" "I don't owe you spiritual stones." Yuan looked at Mujukin's evil face with her bright eyes and took the initiative to kiss her red lips. Mujukin curled his lips and smiled. He was so conscious that he immediately took her into his mouth and carried her into the bedroom. After a while, a harmonious sound came. "Long time. Brother, are they not willing to follow us? I see that my brother and sister-in-law are not in a good mood." Afterwards, Yuan huddled in Mujukin's arms and asked. At this moment, her face was still red, and she had a beautiful face. Extremely. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 379. Chapter 379 Meeting Monks Wanyi again. "Bauer has no spiritual roots and cannot practice," Mujukin said, his face still rubbing against Yuan's face, and his hands and feet were restless. Yuan slapped his face away. Her waist was still sore, and this guy came to tease her again. "Oh, no wonder I saw Bauer and my sister-in-law sitting aside looking out of place today. Did you tell them about the cleansing flower?" "No, the spirit-washing flower is not mature yet. He also has selfish motives. In a few years, his two sons will be able to test their spiritual roots and start practicing. What if his son does not have spiritual roots? You can carry it clearly." Mujukin understood the meaning of her words. He held her face and said, "Do you really think your husband is an idiot? We have two sons. We don't care about our sons no matter what. By the way, Grandpa and second uncle know about Mixio, right?" "I know, you know my grandpa's temper. He can't tolerate sand in his eyes, so he was so angry that he got angry with his second uncle. It's not my fault that Grandpa got angry about this matter. He kept such a big thing from him. Then Grandpa didn't blame me for killing her, right?" Mujukin's eyes darkened. "No, my two cousins complained quite a bit, saying that we shouldn't have killed Mu Shui privately, and even wanted to hate you. They have been close friends since they were young, so we should be careful in the future. Yuan frowned. Then the Dabao and the second treasure won't have anything to do with their parents, right? No wonder the two cousins gave her a meaningful look when they left. She hadn't thought of going there at the time, but now she was a little worried. Don't worry, Mujukan rubbed her eyebrows, kissed her and said, no matter how bold they don't dare to do anything to the second treasure. After all, Mu Shui does not have the blood of our Mu family. Regardless of whether Mujukan's words are true or not, Yuan doesn't believe them all. Her son is her darling and no one can touch him. The two of them talked for a while before getting up. Yuan went to Fangxi and gave the elixir talisman to Yu Haoshan, and got back a bag of spiritual stones. By the way, I bought a lot of monster corpses in the market. During this period, there were too many monks going out to hunt monster beasts, and there were also a lot of monks who came to the market to sell the corpses of monster beasts. Yuan looked at the bargains and swept away all the monster corpses in the market in one breath. Of course these are low-priced. No high-level monk will set up a street stall here, and they will be sent directly to large shops. Mujukan went to see his son. After returning, the two decided to enter the Juya forest. Juya forest is so big that it is half the size of the immortal cultivation world. There are countless monsters in it, and the monsters that are hunted are only a drop in the bucket. The two of them entered the Juya forest after exchanging an explanation. Waner, run, Mujukan shouted. He waved a fire spell and retreated while shouting. It has been a month since they entered the Juya forest. The two of them cooperated with the spiritual pets and killed almost 1,000 monsters. Today, the two of them entered a cave and wanted to take a rest. Unexpectedly, a swarm of high-level poisonous bees in the cave discovered them and immediately attacked them. The two were also separated by poisonous bees. Yuan was forced into the cave. She wanted to enter the space, but once she entered the space, all the poisonous bees here would turn around and attack Mujukan. So she led the poisonous bee farther and farther away from Mujukan. The little snake was entangled and could not help them. Having no choice but to do so, Yuan led the poisonous bee into the cave. The cave is dark and damp, overgrown with weeds, and the ground is full of potholes. If you don't pay attention, you will be knocked down by the vines on the ground. The poisonous bees are not afraid of what is deep in the cave. In their eyes, Yuan is the fragrant food. Yuan also threw away the monster flesh and came out. The poisonous bees ignored her. No matter what she did, the poisonous bees only chased her. Looking like he won't give up. Huh? Is this cave accessible? Yuan put her hands on her knees and gasped, so tired that she was out of breath. She ran for a long time and still couldn't get rid of the poisonous bee, but she saw the end of the cave, where the sun shone in. Yuan threw a pill into her mouth and continued running towards the entrance of the cave. Buzz buzz. The poisonous bees followed closely. The entrance to the cave is near. Whoops, Yuan jumped towards the entrance of the cave with all her strength and jumped out of the cave. Ah! With a scream, Yuan was caught by someone. Run quickly! Yuan didn't have time to see who caught her. She knew that the poisonous bees in the hole had already flown out with her. Stand still. A pleasant sound that made one's ears pregnant sounded, and then she was placed on the ground by the man, with a good smell lingering on the tip of her nose. Ah! Yuan shook her head and stood upright. Isn't this the monk in black clothes who fought with the black bird? Why did we meet here and be embraced by him? Yuan stood there almost stupid. I don't even know how Brother Xuanyi killed the swarm of poisonous bees. You can go, Brother Xuanyi glanced at her and said calmly. Ah, okay, thank you Senior for helping me. Yuan came to her senses after being in a daze for a while and immediately saluted Brother Xuanyi. Monk Xuanyi's cultivation level is at least at the stage of becoming a god, and he rescued her, so it was natural for her to give him the courtesy of a junior. Monk Soigny waved his hand and walked away calmly. Huh? I haven't asked his name yet. I'll thank him if I have the opportunity in the future. Yuan looked at the retreating figure of the monk Soigny and muttered a few words. Master, who do you want to thank? The little snake suddenly flew down from the entrance of the cave and asked her. I didn't thank anyone. Where is Mujukin? I don't know, I got rid of the poisonous bees and came after you. Oh, Yuan glanced at the poisonous bee corpses on the ground and then at the hole that was more than 10 feet high. She quickly put the poisonous bee corpses into her storage bag. Then she let the little snake take her and fly into the cave entrance again. She had to go back to find Mujukin. In the distance, a man in black clothes stood on a colorful black bird, watching Yuan enter the cave. The ancient mythical beast soaring snake. He spat out a few words lightly. There was a female Jindan cultivator in this deep mountain. I met her twice and thought she was very capable. It turned out that she had a soaring snake as her spiritual pet. He looked at the colorful black bird under him, and the black bird trembled when he saw it. This human monk was so cruel that he beat him to the point where he doubted the existence of birds. In the end, he became his mount here obediently. It is a majestic black bird, but it is still looked down upon by others. It is not qualified to be a spiritual pet. Monk Soigny looked away, looked at his slender and strong hands, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Looked at the entrance of the cave before leaving. In the cave, Yuan ran out of the cave quickly. It was extremely quiet outside the cave, and Mujukin was no longer around. Mujukin! Yuan panicked, and shouted with her spiritual power. The sound immediately spread out, startling countless low-level birds and beasts around her. Little snake, look for it quickly, Yuan threw out the little snake. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 380. Chapter 380 found. The little snake understood the seriousness of the matter. Those poisonous bees were not vegetarians. It took a lot of effort to kill some and throw away some before getting rid of them. The little snake chased after Mujukin and the poisonous bee. The master and servant chased him to the edge of a pool and lost Mujukin's aura, and the poisonous bee also disappeared. Master, did you jump into this pool? Yuan jumped into the pool without thinking. The poisonous bee was afraid of fire and water, so Mujukin must have jumped into the pool. The little snake rolled its eyes. The owner didn't even look to see if there was any danger in the pond, but it followed it and dived into the pond. The pond was full of water and grass, which hindered Yuan, so she used her consciousness to search. Sure enough, Mujukin was caught in the water plants. Yuan swung his flying sword and chopped water and grass while swimming. The little snake is also helping. The master and the servant swam to Mujukin without much effort. Yuan took him into the space without saying a word, and then quickly swam ashore, leaving the little snake to hunt the monsters on its own, preferably to find the swarm of poisonous bees. She ducked into the space. In the space, Yuan fed Mujukin a 4th-level detoxification pill, cleaned him up, and then stayed on the bed. It was very dangerous. If she was half an hour late, even if Deluo Jinxian came, she would be unable to save her life. However, Yuan's eyes were sore and her tears couldn't stop flowing. Mujukin's handsome face now turned into a black-skinned pig-headed face. The poisonous bee's venom was really poisonous. If Mujukin hadn't protected his sea of consciousness and heart veins, she might not have been able to find him long ago. That poisonous bee, Yuan swore that when she went out, she would destroy the poisonous bee's nest. After taking the 4th-level detoxification pill, the black color on Mujukin's face gradually dissipated, and the swelling on his face also dissipated. Yuan reached out and touched his fat face. I was afraid it was painful. She leaned over and kissed his face. He raised his slender big hand with clear joints and looked at it again. The black on the palm was also fading. When the detoxification pill finished its effect, she fed another one. It was not until 3 detoxifying pills were taken that the poison was completely detoxified. Then he was given a healing pill, and then a chitinifying pill. In this way, a month passed in space, and Mujukin faintly woke up. "Waner," Mujukin's hoarse voice sounded. "Well, I'm here." Yuan brought him a glass of spiritual spring water and fed him to drink it. "You lie down for a while." "Okay." Mujukin gently grabbed her hand and held it before falling asleep again. When Mujukin woke up, Yuan was completely relieved. She also lay down on the edge of the bed and closed her eyes to sleep for a while. She was also on tenterhooks these days, exhausted physically and mentally, and she actually fell asleep after a while. When she woke up, she was already lying on the bed, and Mujukin was meditating. Yuan smiled knowingly, got up and got into his arms and hugged him tightly. Feel his heartbeat, his breath. Mujukin couldn't continue to meditate. He hugged her with his hands, put his chin on the top of her head, and asked in a gentle voice, "What's going on today? Are you afraid that your husband is dead?" "That's all nonsense. This is called surviving a catastrophe. I'm happy." Yuan gave him a gentle thump. Such a warm moment was completely destroyed by one sentence. "Yes, husband, you're talking nonsense. I'll go out and get the poisonous honeycomb later. The queen bee I killed fell into the pool with me." Mujukin gently stroked her silky hair and fell. "Kiss him." Coincidentally, Yuan laughed out loud. Mujukin clasped her little hand with his big palm, lowered his head and kissed her. "We are in perfect harmony." Yuan raised her head and asked, "Has your body recovered? Is there any residual poison?" Mujukin rubbed her face and shook his head. "She is fine and recovered. Waner wants to go out now. Don't worry, you can meditate for a while, and I'll look for some high-end robes that are suitable for us to wear." She remembered that Huang Qiuying had many cassocks. She used to think that she had worn them, and she didn't like to wear those worn by others. Things are different now. When it comes to matters of life, there is not so much emphasis on it. Mujukin nodded. Yuan stood up and kissed Mujukin on the lips. Mujukin deepened the kiss. It was rare for Waner to be so proactive. Mujukin didn't let Yuan go until she couldn't breathe smoothly. Yuan came to the treasure pavilion, and she went directly to the 4th floor to rummage around. She found 2 cassocks, which must be of a higher grade than those from Kinjao continent. She immediately put on a silver one and picked up the purple cassock she had found for Mujukin. There is no way, the men's cassocks Huang Qiuying bought are either bright red or purple, and they are all in a flamboyant style. It's hard to find anything that's plain and simple. When Yuan returned to the wooden house, Mujukin had recovered completely. He took the clothes and put them on. The purple cassock made him look more noble and made Yuan lose his mind. Mujukin rubbed her head, and Yuan blushed slightly, holding his hand, and the 2 of them came out of the room. "Waner, do you want to find the poisonous queen bee?" "No," Yuan waved her hand. The poisonous queen was only a little bigger than her fist, and the burnt food was not enough to fit between her teeth except for the inedible ones. The 2 of them rushed towards the original cave. The queen bee ran away, and the 2 remaining poisonous bees should still be able to deal with it. When the 2 returned, sure enough, the half of the poisonous bees that had been chasing Jukin were still in the hive. Seeing them coming again, they all flew out to attack them. This time the 2 of them were protected by robes. No matter how they stung or poisoned them, they had no effect. Instead, they were all killed by their fire spells. After that, Yuan collected the hive as big as a house before looking for the little snake. "If I had known that this robe was so defensive and had put it on earlier, you wouldn't have suffered such a big sin. It's not too late now. By the way, what about those poisonous bees chasing you?" "These poisonous bees are half of the ones chasing me." Mujukin looked at Yuan and asked her with some doubts. Although he was the poisonous bee queen, she was lured away, and there were many 4th level ones chasing her. Well, I met a senior who helped me, Yuan said truthfully. She looked at Mujukan quietly with her consciousness and saw that there was nothing unusual about him. Oh, you know him? Yuan shook her head. I don't know. Then you didn't ask her his or her last name, so that you could come and say thank you when you get back? No, that senior cultivated himself as a god. He killed the poisonous bees and left. I didn't even have time to ask. Oh, forget it, let's talk about it when we have the chance to meet him in the future. Yuan nodded. It's better not to run into her. It would be her unlucky thing to let jealous Mujukan see her peerless appearance. The two of them searched for a while in the forest and found the little snake, and started their hunting journey again. Waner, the monsters are getting more and more manic. Mujukan frowned and said worriedly. Yuan took the corpse of the monster she had just killed into the space. She nodded. Yes, it is becoming more and more dangerous every day. We don't know the reason. We are really afraid that, like the Xianling continent, we will have to leave this continent again. End of this chapter.